All right, so welcome everybody to the October 2023 Collaboration Cafe webinar, sponsored by the Midwest Big Data Innovation Hub with support from the National Science Foundation. I'm John MacMullen. I'm the Executive Director of the Midwest Big Data Innovation Hub, and today we'll be exploring the second of two programs from NSF that are focused on cyber infrastructure workforce development. If you joined us last month, we looked at the cyber training program. So today we'll look at the new SCIPE program, which was sort of an offshoot of cyber training. And to help us understand the goals that NSF has for this program and some of the details about that, I'm very happy to welcome a program director with responsibility for the SCIPE program, Tom Gulbransen. Tom, thanks for being here today.
Certainly.
And then I noticed we also do have at least one prior awardee of this program as well. I've got to get my window open here. So we have Karen Tomko from the Ohio Supercomputer Center. Hi, Karen. Thanks for being here as well. We're hoping to hear a little bit from you later on about your experience, I believe, in the first round of this program last year. I think you were one of the first awardees in the program. So we're really happy to have you here today as well.
Great. Yeah. Look forward to chatting with everyone.
All right. So the slides for today's session will be available on our website shortly after the webinar today, and we'll post the recording on our YouTube channel as well. So just to get us started, for those of you who are new to this series and to our hub, I'll mention that we're part of a national network of 4 innovation hubs for data science funded by NSF since 2015. And so we have this regional focus here in the Midwest with 12 states where we have a service area, but we're part of this national network of 4 hubs where we collaborate on data science activities across the country as well. And so each of us are focused on building communities and collaborations around data science and other related topics. And so if you're watching this from outside the Midwest, feel free to reach out to the hub in your neighborhood, and they can connect you with folks who may be doing things that you're doing. All right, and so here in the Midwest, we have some priority areas that we focus on. Some of those are domain specific, but we also have some cross-cutting themes like data science education and workforce development, as well as cyber infrastructure and data sharing. And that's really where we're focusing today and in our last session. So all of these are based on regional strengths and community interests that we have here in the Midwest. As I said, this is the second part of our 2-part series on CI workforce development. Last month, we looked at cyber infrastructure training through the cyber training program, and today we'll look at the SCIPE program. And if you've been tuned into this series, you know that we have looked at several other programs in the past around CI and around training and workforce development. And so if you missed any of those, you feel free to go back to our playlist on YouTube and check those out. Lots of great information there, and we've had some fantastic guests from NSF to tell us more about those programs. All right, so we're going to focus on SCIPE today, and I'm going to stop sharing here so that our guest can take over for a little bit, but we'll come back to some other details in a bit here. So go ahead, Tom, take it away whenever you're ready.
Get my volume going, and I'll share this screen. Hopefully this is the one that you'll see a full screen worth of a slide.
Yep, looks good.
Get my talking face out of the way. So yeah, I appreciate the Data Hub's activity that you've been doing for a while. Water quality is pretty near and dear to my heart. That's where I spent a lot of my time. I'm actually a rotator with the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure. I come from Battelle Memorial Institute, so fair amount of time working the Great Lakes data and water quality in particular. So thank you for that. Then I more recently spent a lot of time trying to help construct the National Ecological Observatory Network that NSF offers continent-wide with some water quality data as well. So your efforts to connect communities and use these data are appreciated. Thank you for that. What I can do today is run through a progression of slides, 8 or 9 slides. We can do them pretty quickly. But let me start off by noting right in the middle of this slide is the announcement and the URL for the webinar that we'll have for this coming cycle of cyber training and SCIPE, which we speak about together because they're often a little bit overlapping, and folks have been known to switch from one program to the other in their ideas and developing proposals. So you heard from Ashok last time. Let's do SCIPE this time. You're welcome to speak with us, any of the program directors, to refine your ideas and approaches. Andrei Kaneyev is the one of the stated cognizant program officers who might be able to join us later on today. Those are our 2 emails and my phone number. So we'll do this. You might have seen these slides, many did last year. They'll be presenting in this year. I have 1 or 2 more to sprinkle in for visual depictions and conversation, but my intention is just simply to reiterate messages that we've had out there. I don't want to be uneven in the revealing of things. We're just going to talk about the scope. I can react to questions about whether your ideas are fit responses or potential responses, and I need to do that in a way that avoids giving you a thumbs up, thumbs down on that's a really good idea versus that's not a good idea. I just need to stay on the clarification, and that's what we'll do today. Sure why I'm not getting a page down happening here. There we go. The ecosystem overall, this is a perspective from the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure. Overall, democratization, that word, right? What does that really mean? From the workforce development point of view, it means bringing more opportunities to more people, to perhaps different people, different regions than have in the past been actively involved with this ecosystem of advanced computing and such. So we want to hear about obstacles that you know of that you can overcome or knock down to allow more people to have access to be involved. And another part of the SCIPE program and why the SCIPE program has been lifted out and sort of spawned from cyber training is that SCIPE is more about the workforce and the deployment of those individuals into scientific endeavors, as contrasted with cyber training. I'll try to say that 7 or 8 different times in different ways, and then if I can get it across well, I also want to underscore the importance of what we're calling institutionalizing of these cyber infrastructure professional career pathways. Doing a job wonderfully for a few years is a good thing. Doing it so that it is sustainable and keeps going beyond the funding period, that would be really one of the major goals. The spread of awards, I think, is indicative of an emphasis that we have to try to engage as widely as possible. A couple of areas are not yet, or were not yet involved as of the last year's awards. There have been 4 more. I didn't try to fill in the blanks, but the message continues to be everyone from everywhere or anyone from anywhere is fine. Let me give you a quick picture, just because as an environmental information systems person, when you say ecosystem, I'm pretty sure there's lots of ways to think about the word ecosystem. And so here's my attempt to try to do that. The Access program, which is another program in the office here, coordinates and connects together researchers with needs for compute with resource providers who have cycles available or storage available and connectivity available, and then professionals who can help that occur. So the Access program is behind the scenes, helping these connections happen. Connections between whom? At the core, in the middle, is the science and engineering, research and education needs, right? And they are working on or building upon platforms, whether they're computing centers or instrumentation that's out there. And sometimes the researcher needs to find these special folks, these unicorn type folks who are cyber infrastructure specialists of various types. Some of them exist as individuals and institutions. Some of them exist as groups that I'm sure you know about, or networks of people. And so SCIPE sees these layers, if you will, and maybe there's different ways to depict it. The SCIPE program is trying to see connectivity between these ways, new ways to connect, new topics to address, maybe the topics that hadn't been addressed before. So that's what we're hoping to see occur. It's also, I think it's going to be helpful to highlight how the SCIPE program sits next to quite a few other programs that are also about learning and workforce development, but different enough that we want to try to feature today this third column, where we're about the cyber infrastructure professionals who we hope to see deployed into research projects or into activities that are going to advance the science. That's in contrast to research about CI, about cyber infrastructure or techniques and technologies. That would be more of a core, the core program that we have, where you were just trying to come up with a new method. Another difference is that for the most part, SCIPE is trying to get people ready in new ways to do new things. Along the course of doing that, there might be some training. There might be some materials that get put together, or maybe is an application or a platform that helps that training to occur. Okay, so now that training is helping that other fourth column called cyber training. It's okay to do some training and maybe even to produce a thing, an application or some kind of product, but that's secondary to what SCIPE is trying to do. Another part of SCIPE that's common to another program is this CSSI program. Their software is being developed, applications are being developed and being tested and being pursued to evaluate whether they could be sustainable over time. That sustainability might occur through communities that get put together around a piece of software. Well, SCIPE has a similar invitation to seek sustainability, to get communities to help these CIP careers to occur. Might not just be on one campus, it might be across the community. So that's where it's a little bit in common with the CSSI program. A couple of more fundamental topics, words that I just want to walk through, because my intention here is not to get more specific and more refined and more narrowly focused. It's more to broaden out to make sure that we're not getting too. I talked about the democratization and how that we expect can be occurring through connectivity. It's also strengthening in a way, it could be strengthening in a way that helps a cyber infrastructure professional's efforts to be seen, to be valued, to be recognized. Oftentimes folks do these phenomenal jobs. The publications go out and the name of some of the contributing experts aren't really amongst the authors. That's unfortunate. We want to try to hear about ways to help get all of the people involved to be recognized for what they're doing, because that's what stands over time and helps folks to have more opportunities to do that in the future. And we've heard very often that it's a bit less recognized than it could be. CI, the cyber infrastructure term itself, and what we're trying to help develop, advance the workforce skills in, can be software, but it also could be a data-centric approach, or it could be the services that are surrounding a particular discipline. Or it can be, and it can be networking of people or of resources that can be brought together in a new way. So there's an openness to how you're welcome to combine these things pursuant to the criteria that we'll see in a couple of minutes here. Who are CIP and what kind of person or persons fit the profile of what's trying to come out of these programs? There isn't one profile. Professionals they come from the developer communities. Many neat things come right out of users who have skills and with a couple more skills are in fact developers, or maybe the user's role is more in the validation of the service and the data that are being processed. So a developer has a part of the function done, and then user involvement helps to ensure that it's accomplishing what was intended. That basis of users of software is another aspect of SCIPE, which might be different from the other programs. In SCIPE, we want to hear about workforce development and cyber infrastructure advancement that will be done in concert with, in direct collaboration with domain expertise, with a particular discipline or multiple disciplines for that matter. That's where you'll see in the solicitation, it says, please reach out to the other directorates in NSF to corroborate the type of application areas or the type of research that your skills and your professionals would be helpful to. You don't necessarily have to get letters of collaboration, but we do expect, at least on the key personnel, that there are co-PIs or the PI that come from non-cyber infrastructure disciplines and expertise. That blending is what we think is most useful to ensure the adoption into the sciences, and as contrasted with a pure readiness technology that doesn't have a home yet. The ecosystem, I mentioned it before, but it's those interdependencies. That ecosystem is evolving. That's a good thing. So maybe you'll have questions because it's different than it was 2 years ago. It's different than it was last year. It'll be different again next year. But we are evolving in response to a number of things. The platforms that are coming up are out of testbed mode, are giving us new cycles and new GPU-based resources. The workflows involved, the data being reached or moved, those landscapes are changing. That's part of the ecosystem which you're welcome to work with. And then the ecosystem also refers to the different programs, the NSF programs that are active. When I talked about the Access program, that's really 5 awards, soon to be 6 different awards. They're independently awarded, but they're actually tightly coordinated. And the SCIPE awardees are expected to, as it says in the solicitation, collaborate with the support team, in particular with the CSSN, the network of science support services. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But my point for right now is that there are other programs that are coming to the fore that are going to continue to be additions to the ecosystem. Maybe some will go away as well. And these SCIPE professionals, the sustainability might be affected by which programs they can relate to. So that's another part of that use of that word ecosystem, and what might be worth making note of or using and referring to. And I mentioned the institutional recognition of the careers. That certainly is something that we look forward to. Great ideas to do. There are many ways to do it, and some have been more successful than others, but we appreciate the attempts to try to improve the lives of CIP folks. I won't reread the solicitation, but there is that long-term vision that you want to draw from and connect to. All those words came through long committee process and are there for specific reasons. Some of them are very general with regard to democratization, and some of them are quite specific. Please do pick up on them and use the entire solicitation to guide your proposition and what you fit into your proposals. To quickly go across the scale of it, 15 million is the hoped for amount of money that we have available to make awards to. You can look at last year's and prior awards if you want to get a sense for what other people did. That doesn't mean that awards have a, any individual award has a specific level. Different approaches can be had. We're not sure 15 million will be there. And we're also not sure that that's the ceiling, because if another directorate sees hears about one of your ideas and says, we want in on this, co-funding could create additional resources to add to this. So please do share your ideas and rev up support, rev up interest. The call asks for up to 4 full-time equivalents per year over a period of 5 years. It doesn't say you have to do 4, but the thought is that this scale of program ought to be able to produce on the order of 4 full-time equivalent people in this capacity as a cyber infrastructure professional. The directorates are listed there. These are the directorates that bought into the program explicitly and are looking forward to hearing about ideas. Others are not there, but you are able to speak to other directorates and see if they might have an interest there. This is a pretty wide group though, so hopefully your ideas can serve somebody here. I mentioned before who are the people that we think could be applicable here. Let me just reiterate the facings that have been talked about. We have facings oriented toward the systems administrators, and that is certainly true. The cyber infrastructure professionals to be involved will be expected to be steeped in some extent of the resource providers that access gives the users allocations in. Doesn't have to be all of them, but those are certainly leaders that you'll want to connect with. And there are other facings with regard to the resource software engineers and the data curation folks who might be stakeholders who you could work with to further democratize use of this ecosystem. But we're going to drive, and we will drive towards the adoption of the research CI. It's not cyber infrastructure training that's generically going to make our code more efficient. We want to get into a particular or multiple particular research areas. And perhaps doing it at a community level would address some of that scalability and the broader impacts. We don't, impact is one thing, broader impact is a better thing. Diversity of the workforce is certainly consistent with the democratization approach. And as I said before, and I'll try again, many of the people who do these wonderful things with cyber infrastructure are functioning within institutions, and I guess I still am one of them. And I'll admit, in my institution, the boss's boss doesn't actually know what we do and doesn't quite know where to put us. Are we biologists? Are we ecologists? Are we chemists? Or are we in IT? No, for the most part, probably not. But the associations are there. So institutional recognition and clarity would be a wonderful outcome to be pursuing. I've said the overall goal a couple of different ways. Sustainability has been mentioned a few different ways. Recognition, best practices is part of what I probably didn't say. Yeah, in the course of developing a cyber infrastructure professional, maybe there are ways of doing that, which when you're finished doing it or while you're doing it, you could make that available. It could be shared or replicated elsewhere. That's a broader impact, would be would be responsive. Professional development and training resources, mentoring, those are things that can be done. In fact, let's go to, well, let me just do the criteria and then we'll go to the access program itself. Here are the 6 criteria to address. Sorry that it goes long and the solicitation is pretty long, but the length of it represents kind of like the broad range of ways that we expect and we have seen people respond. So, but do try to respond to these criteria as best you can. You don't want to miss any of these. That'd be unfortunate. The collective impact strategy, there's an or in there. You don't have to follow that particular citations methods, but the notion there is impacts that are far further reaching than the specific people engaged directly. And now for the newer part, this reach across so that SCIPE awardees will collaborate with the access program certainly means, you know, I think it says at least 20% of your time. Doesn't have to be 20%, could be more if it works out to you the way you want to operate. But that support network, the CSSN network, these are mentors that will be matched up with researchers to advance their research or to improve their methods. There are other ways that the access program invites or provides opportunities for these professionals to help or to be valuable. And an example would be the knowledge base that exists in Access right now. Asks about CI has been brought forward, and this is a sort of a chatbot environment where questions are posed, answers are produced, and that becomes queryable, able to be revisited asynchronously. And that is a valuable resource and one that is growing. So there is opportunity to contribute there. There's opportunity to contribute to some of the testing of methods and tools that are being developed by the Access Program's user support team. And stay tuned. Other examples that have been mentioned, but are these are not requirements. These are just identification of the fact that there are multiple ways that the Access Program serves researchers. And if you have an idea of another way, please do describe it and sort of build upon the fundamental connection that we hope to have with the support team. I think that's as far as we wanted to go. Yeah. Again, there's the announcement for the webinar, which just came out yesterday, I believe, which will be held November 7th. You'll hear much of this again, but we're fine to take questions now if you'd like.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Tom. And audience, feel free to post questions in the chat at any point here, and we will get to those as soon as we can. That was great, Tom. Thanks. And you know, you really covered a lot of the details that are going to be in my slides as well. So I'm going to skip a lot of that. But yeah, I really enjoyed the 2 graphic slides that you have. I think those were in the presentation that you all gave at PERC and in other venues as well. And that really helps people, I think, to see the context of how this program fits into the rest of the portfolio at NSF, because there is a lot of CI opportunities for CI research and practice. And so getting a sense of what is this program compared to other programs, I think is really helpful to see.
And if it prompts questions, that's okay too. I often draw pictures and makes people's heads tilt sideways, but at least it shows we're trying to have a conversation and we can provide more clarifications as needed.
Absolutely. So one question that I have for you as I get my slides back up, you mentioned that this program is intended to support individual people. So this is a people-focused kind of project. And up to 4 FTE was the guidance in the solicitation. I'm assuming that those individual people can change over that 5-year period. It doesn't have to be the same 4 people the whole time, but there's some kind of continuity to the work that and the training that they're receiving as a part of that, right?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I probably should have found a way to address that, anticipated up front. It does not have to be the same 4 people. Toward the notion of broader impacts and community building, one can imagine that having 4 people and then having 4 more people turns into 20 people over time. That's perhaps broader than to have the same 4 people doing that service. There would be a lot of touches that those 4 people could do, but if those 4 people move on in a sustainable capacity, then they continue funding elsewhere, and it would be broader. So I think that yep, does not have to be the same 4.
Yeah, I mean,
And in fact, it doesn't have to be only 4 names at any given time. A full-time equivalent can be spread across, pick a number. I wouldn't pick 40, but you could conceivably do 8 people, and a half-time basis is really 4 FTEs, and go forward from there.
Yeah, I think having cyber training been around for quite a while, people are often familiar with the idea of cohorts of trainees or cohorts of people working for some period of time, and then the next cohort comes in. And so it seems like that could be a way that you could approach a proposal here to build a cohort system where more than 4 come through that over the course of the award.
That would be responsive, yes.
All right, so I'll go very quickly through the rest of my slides here with the reminder that you can get these on our website after the call. One thing that we saw in the cyber training session last month was that NSF has this breakdown of different communities that are relevant to the CI world. And so in this particular case, we're focused on CI professionals and targeting them. The solicitation says in order to support the other 2 communities primarily, but just so that people are aware that this language does change across those 2 solicitations, and the focus changes a bit as well. So when you're reading through each of those to see which program might be the best fit for your concept, just keep that in mind, that language does change depending upon which one you're looking at. Tom, went through the strategic and specific goals, so I'm going to skip that slide. But the comment that I'll make is that there's a lot of great detail in the solicitation, talking about the motivation for these goals and providing a lot of literature and prior work to support what those needs are. And so definitely spend some time reading through that solicitation and getting a sense of where that guidance is coming from. I think I'm going to skip most of this as well. You talked about the access linkage. But again, lots of really good guidance in the solicitation that helps you think about how to tailor your project to the needs here. And some folks may have questions.
One of the differences to contrast is that the outcomes of the cyber training are typically the production of materials that can be used again and again and again for training, whereas the outcomes of the SCIPE program are advancement of science and people having brighter CVs, having more sustainable, recognized roles and paths to go within an institution or across institutions.
And I was about to say the last bullet here really addresses what you just alluded to, and that is that there are other people out there in the world who are approaching this from other directions. The RSE community, some of the campus CI folks have done a lot of work looking at the community needs here, and so it's good to see in the solicitation calling that out specifically as potential collaboration opportunities. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about your collaborators and potential folks that you want to work with as well. Couple of quick notes about what you should include in your proposal. This looks a lot like a typical NSF proposal in some ways, but there are also differences. Some of these carry over from the cyber training structure in terms of having a management coordination plan, having some sustainability discussion. Tom, a question I had for you, the CI mentoring plan says if applicable, but I'm assuming that it's all going to be applicable for SCIPE, right? Everybody in there is going to be a CI professional, right?
Correct. I would, as you say, follow the specifications asked for in the structure of the proposal. Some of these sections, for example, the professional mentoring and development might say see bulk of body. That's what we're doing here. But yeah, please do put them all in. There is a compliance check that occurs at the beginning. And if something is missing and not even referred, not even provided through cross referrals, it can turn into a return without review. So,
right. Yeah. And you don't want to get all the way to that point and have it sent back to you. So you got to make sure you got all the pieces in there. One other quick note, letters of collaboration in this particular solicitation do use the standard template. So there's no letters of support where people are saying how great the project is. This is all about the actual work that you're going to do with your collaborators in that section.
yeah, if I could reiterate, the template that is being used is a very generic statement.
Right.
In that statement, though, it says something to the effect of, we will respond and support as described in the proposal.
Right.
So the proposal ought to have a description thereof. So it is a good thing to address in both fronts.
Absolutely. Okay, and as you said, there are specific elements in the project description that people need to be responsive to, and you walked through those a bit. I'll mention that there is a board of advisors or some kind of other stakeholder representation that is talked about in the solicitation as well, so that you have some broader community that is providing input to you about your project and your trajectory and those sorts of things.
These will be grants, so it is good to know that a grant will have some guidance along the way.
Absolutely. And you touched on the review criteria as well. There's a standard merit review, but for this solicitation, there are specific criteria. And do these look familiar to you? Yeah, they're the same things as that we just talked about in the project description. So again, it's super important to make sure all those are covered, because that's what the review panel is going to be looking at. The panelists will look at each of those criteria, and so they better be in your project description as well.
And I don't mind hearing myself say that broader impacts are as important as intellectual merit.
Yeah, and in fact, there is you must have a separate section specifically talking about broader impacts in your description as well, right? Okay, so I think that is everything that I wanted to cover here on my end. Again, if folks have questions, feel free to put those in the chat or unmute here. I just wanted to wrap up with a reminder. As Tom said, there is a webinar for cyber training and SCIPE on November 7th. There's also the CSSI program webinar coming up tomorrow, in fact. And so if you're interested in either of those are available to register for now. The next edition of this webinar will be a little early next month on November 9th. We're trying to make sure that we don't get impacted by any potential federal government shutdown later in the month. So we'll have our November session a little bit early, and we'll be talking with a program director from NIH about one of their big data workforce development solicitations in the biomedical space. So feel free to join us for that, and to join NSF as well. I have a few discussion starting questions here that we can get into in a bit, but we have another guest on the line today, and I wanted to check in with Karen Tomko from Ohio State about your experience. You know, I know that you have had cyber training proposals before and awards, and now you have received a SCIPE award as well. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your experience with this program, maybe relative to some of the other work that you've done, and what you're trying to accomplish with this one.
Sure, happy to. So, so I'm a co-PI on a new SCIPE award that's led by Vipin Chaudhary at Case Western Reserve University. That project is just getting started. Official start date was October 1 for the project. And so thought I'd just kind of give a little overview of it and kind of how we hit some of those requirements for the proposal solicitation. First of all, the title of it's a little bit of a mouthful. It's an interdisciplinary research support community for artificial intelligence and data science. But the bottom line is that we saw a growing research community with sort of large-scale science and that span disciplines that was using AI and data science methods in the research. And so we see this at the universities, and we felt that we needed more CI professionals that could support that community. Many of our professionals kind of came up through standard kind of simulation, single domain science simulation backgrounds. And so how do we grow a group of cyber infrastructure professionals that are comfortable in this interdisciplinary environment and have the skills to support machine learning and data science? So that was the problem we saw that we wanted to address. We have a team in Ohio spanning Case Western, Ohio Supercomputer Center, and University of Cincinnati, where the CI professionals are going to span those three organizations, two at Case, one at OSC, one at UC. Two of them will be machine learning engineers, two will be machine learning facilitators, with a lot of overlap in those positions, but a little more focus on the outreach to researchers from the facilitators, and a little more focus on larger scale embedded projects with research teams from the engineers. Additionally, we have several collaborators, some funded, some unfunded, from large scale research projects that will be our kind of initial projects to embed the CI professionals in as we mentor them. So they'll get experience right off the bat in working with some of these big science projects, and we'll work on best practices, decide, you know, how do we scope the projects, and how do we kind of ingest, track progress, decide when a project's done, and get that process worked out. We're participating or have members from many organizations regionally and nationally. So some of the research coordination networks that were awarded recently, about a year or two ago, from NSF, we have participation and collaboration from some of our co-investigators in those, like some of us were part of the Midwest RCD network. So our plan is to kind of start in Ohio, grow out regionally, and then nationally. We also have a team member who is part of the access support team, the match award team, and so to help us with our coordination with access support, and so it's actually really helpful to have someone kind of on with a foot in both sides there to help make sure that interaction gets it goes well, and that we sort of the process is there, as it's kind of new for everybody. And then I think lastly, we have several colleges and universities in Ohio that most of them are, several of them are have large minority populations, and so part of our hope to democratize the workforce is to have internships from these community partners, and also opportunities for the faculty and staff at those colleges and universities to do projects, get involved in the research projects, along with students doing internship projects. So we have a fellowship opportunity for the faculty and staff, and an internship opportunity for students, and we'll be doing outreach to those organizations, making sure they have access to the CI resources they need in data science and AI, as well as opportunities to get involved in research activities. So that's the elevator pitch. Maybe not quite an elevator pitch, a little bit of a long version.
If I could add to Karen's description, as an awardee, that team and some of the other teams are assembling kind of an ad hoc or an informal gathering periodically. So future SCIPE awardees will also have the opportunity to compare notes, and it's not binding, or there's no requirement to, but it is yet another aspect of community building and method sharing and such that seems to be emerging organically in a good way. That's not called out or called for in the solicitation, but it's encouraging to witness it happening.
Yeah, that's great. And, in the solicitation, they do say you need to budget for the annual PI meeting. And so I'm assuming that some of that networking and discussion happens in that venue. But yeah, to have a separate, particularly at a regional level, version of that seems to be a nice addition there. So Karen, in the chat, I put in the link to your SCIPE award and to the RCN that you mentioned, which is led out of Indiana University. If folks are interested in either of those, the first link I put in was a mistake. So the last two in the chat are what we're just hearing about from you. As you said, that is a collaborative SCIPE award, and so you have multiple institutions there. I'm wondering if you can talk about what that process was like for you. Some folks may have submitted NSF proposals before, but not for a multi-institutional collaboration. And so what can they expect to need to focus on when they're building that relationship and thinking about the scope of work for each of the partners?
Yeah, I think what happened is that Fippen and myself are both on this in this Icicle AI Institute, and so we knew each other from that. And when the solicitation came out, we contacted each other and said, "Hey, this looks like something we should think about." And then my colleague Dave Hudek suggested we bring University of Cincinnati in as well. We submitted these as collaborative awards, so we each have our own budget and agreement with NSF through the collaborative grants. But it's a single proposal description, right? And so the initial thing is to talk about the vision and make sure everyone kind of coalesces on the same vision of the project, and then talk about kind of what are the activities, what are the personnel, and how do you want to split them. I believe certainly the solicitation we responded to required you to have the 4 positions across at least two entities, I believe. So we couldn't, you couldn't put all 4 the positions at one place and have the other partners with no CIPs. So that is part of the requirement, was that the professionals be split across organizations. So we talked about how to do the split in this case. As the lead, and also as a place where there are several of our large science collaborations identified, has 2 positions, and then we decided to do 1 at each of the other organizations. And then because OSC currently supports CI that's available statewide in Ohio, it made sense that the outreach activities be centered at OSC. One of our co-PIs at the has actually left OSC and is being replaced, but will lead the program with the partner colleges and universities. So that activity is centered at UC, or sorry, at OSC, and then UC has a kind of a newer centralized research computing group, and their goal was to get more staff, so it all kind of worked out pretty well. I think that we found the right split for the organizations involved.
That's great. That's very helpful to know. Tom, I guess I'm wondering, from NSF's perspective, is there anything proposers should be mindful of in terms of doing a collaborative proposal versus a lead institution with sub-awardees in that regard?
I'll give you an answer if I promise to give the same answer to everybody else. I've only recently learned that, well, the collaborative proposals are fine. Sub-awards are fine too. There are differences in how they're treated, and I learned today that collaborative proposals can assist NSF in, how that map I showed of where things are? You get to put yourself on a map if you're a collaborative proposal awardee. If you're a sub-awardee, you're not as visible. So that's all just the way things get worked out administratively. But both approaches are acceptable, compliant, and fine.
Very good.
So in our case, we got three
dots
for Ohio, because we had 3 different organizations in Ohio.
Well, and the democratization is a real thing.
Yeah.
And people ask my boss, where are we? How are we doing? EPSCoR is a program, right, dedicated to the Chips and Science Act, has EPSCoR urgings inside of it. So these are all additional perspectives that also take a look at what we're doing from different ways, and to the extent we can help show them how these works are being performed, that's helpful. And the collaborative proposals are apparently easier to see and attribute than our subawards. Doesn't change the ranking of the solicitation for these reviews, but it is a reality of how such work is looked at and aggregated by various people that aggregate things.
From an awardee perspective, you get your money directly from NSF. If you're a collaborative award, you don't have to wait for the subcontract to be done after the prime gets the money, right? So it's a little bit faster to get your funds and kind of easier to, you know, like just independently manage them, right?
Great. Well, that is all helpful to know. Our time has really flown by here. We're at the end of our hour already, but are there any last questions that audience members have, or Tom, Karen, was anything you would like to leave prospective proposers with before we sign off today?
Our office appreciates the chance to reach out, and I appreciate how well you manage the clock. Thanks very much.
Just thanks, John, for the opportunity.
All right. Well, thank you both as well. It's great to have you on the call and to share the information and your experiences. And so hopefully you'll see some folks from our community on the webinar that's coming up. And thanks again for being here today.
Thank you.